My mother forbade me everything and treated me like a child at the age of 18 because a fortune teller once told her that I would get pregnant at an early age. Growing up, my mom always said she was just trying to protect me. From what exactly, I was never sure. Bad people? Bad decisions? The world in general? It felt like everything beyond our front door was a potential threat in her eyes, while my friends were out riding their bikes until sunset or going to birthday sleepovers. I was usually at home, under her watchful eye. She'd have a reason for every restriction. What if something happens? What if you get hurt? What if you need me and I'm not there? At first, I didn't question it. I thought it was normal, this hyper-focus on my safety, the endless questions, the way she always seemed one step away from wrapping me in bubble wrap. But by middle school, it became harder to ignore the differences between my life and everyone else's. My friends had freedom. They stayed out late, went to dances, and texted boys without hiding their phones under their pillows. Me? I was home every weekend, answering 1,000 questions if I even asked to go out. Who's going to be there? Are their parents home? Are their parents normal? Do they lock their doors at night? I didn't know how to explain to her that I wasn't doing anything dangerous. I wasn't sneaking out, drinking, or breaking rules. I was a good kid. Straight-A student. No disciplinary problems. I wasn't rebellious. I was just tired. When I turned 18, I thought things would change. I could vote, I could join the army, I could sign my own lease. But in my mom's eyes, I was still her little girl, and her grip on me only tightened. No boys. No late nights. No trips out of town without her. And absolutely no dorm life if I went to college because you never know what happens in those places. At first, I tried to reason with her. I'd point out my good grades, my quiet social life, the fact that I'd never done anything to break her trust. But reasoning with my mom was like arguing with a brick wall. Her answers were always final, always wrapped in a tone that said, "I know better than you." But the worst part wasn't the rules, it was the way she made me feel. Like I was constantly on the verge of making some catastrophic mistake, like she was waiting for me to fail just so she could say, "See? I told you so." By the time I hit my senior year, I wasn't angry, I was numb. I stopped asking permission to go out because I already knew the answer. I stopped bringing up my frustrations because every conversation felt like a dead end, but still, deep down, I kept wondering, what is she so afraid of? I didn't have the answer yet, but I had a feeling it was something bigger than just keeping me safe. I had always wanted a tattoo. It wasn't a rebellious impulse or some fleeting idea, it was something I had thought about for years. A small design, something meaningful, something that felt mine. And now that I was 18, I could finally do it without asking anyone's permission, but the thought of telling my mom made my stomach twist into knots. I already knew her answer. Her disapproval was practically guaranteed, but I still wanted to try. I wanted to show her that this was something I had carefully considered, not some impulsive act of teenage rebellion. When I finally brought it up one evening while she was folding laundry at the kitchen table, her reaction was immediate and sharp. She didn't raise her voice, but her no was so firm, so final, that it felt like a brick wall had slammed down between us. At first, I thought it was just her usual overprotectiveness. Another thing on the long list of things I wasn't allowed to do. But then, she sat down and told me something she'd never shared before. When she was younger, she said, a fortune teller had approached her. The woman had told her all kinds of things about her future, about my father, about how they'd meet, about how he'd come from far away. And strangely, every single prediction had come true, but there was one thing the woman had said that haunted her still. Her first child, me, would get seriously ill after getting a tattoo. Something about my skin, something that could go terribly wrong. She admitted she didn't know if she believed it, but she couldn't shake the fear. The idea had rooted itself deep in her mind, and no amount of logic could pull it out. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't believe in fortune tellers or prophecies, but I did believe in the look on my mother's face, the genuine fear, the way her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. In the end, I didn't argue. I let her words settle over me, heavy and unavoidable. And I promised her I wouldn't get a tattooed. It felt like giving up a small piece of myself, a little act of surrender. But when I saw the relief in her eyes, I couldn't bring myself to regret it, at least, not yet. After the tattoo conversation, something shifted between me and my mom. For a while, she was softer, almost fragile, as if sharing that story had left her exposed. But whatever vulnerability she'd shown quickly hardened back into her usual armor of strict rules and unyielding control. If I thought turning 18 would bring me more freedom, I was dead wrong. If anything, her grip on me tightened. She started asking more questions about my whereabouts, checking my phone more often, and side-eyeing me whenever I mentioned friends, especially boys, at first. I thought maybe she was just on edge from the tattoo conversation. Maybe she was scared I'd go behind her back. But weeks turned into months, and things only got worse. I wasn't allowed to stay out late. Calls and texts from classmates, especially guys, were treated with suspicion. I couldn't even consider leaving for college unless I stayed close to home. "You can commute," she said once, in her usual firm but final voice. "There's no need for you to live in a dorm." By this point, my friends had stopped asking me to hang out. They knew the answer would be no. Even my teachers had started noticing. My English teacher, Mrs. Parker, pulled me aside after class one day and asked if everything was okay at home. I lied and said yes, but things weren't okay. They were stifling. I started to feel like I was living in a gilded cage, safe, yes, but trapped. One afternoon, I sat in my room staring at the ceiling, my phone lighting up with notifications from a group chat I had slowly stopped engaging in. I thought about my future, about college, about freedom, about doing something as simple as grabbing coffee with a friend without my mom demanding to know every detail. I didn't hate her. I knew her intentions came from a place of love, or at least, a place of fear wrapped in love. But I was starting to realize that whatever she was afraid of wasn't just about tattoos, or bad influences, or staying out late. It was something deeper. Something unspoken. I didn't know it then, but I was about to find out. It was late spring when the tension between me and my mom started to boil over. I was weeks away from graduating high school, and while everyone around me was buzzing about college acceptances and summer plans, I felt like I was watching it all from behind glass. I had been accepted into a university a few hours away. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was good, and they'd even offered me a partial scholarship. The idea of leaving home, of having my own space, my own rules, felt almost unreal. But every time I brought it up, my mom would shut it down. "Why would you want to leave? You can go to community college here. It's cheaper, and you'll be close to home." Close to her, she meant. One evening, I decided to push back. I was sitting across from her at the dinner table, barely touching my food while she scrolled through her phone. "Mom, I'm going to the university I got into. I've earned it, and I'm not going to let this chance pass me by." She didn't even look up. "We'll talk about it later." "We never talk about it later," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. "You just make the decision for me." That got her attention. She set her phone down and stared at me, her expression tight and unreadable. "I'm trying to protect you. Why can't you understand that?" "From what, Mom? From living? From having a normal life like everyone else?" She pressed her lips together and turned away, her shoulders tense. For a second, I thought she might finally tell me, finally explain what had her so terrified of letting me go. But she didn't. Instead, she left the table, muttering something about needing to lie down. That night, I sat in my room staring at my acceptance letter, the crisp paper crumpled slightly from how tightly I was holding it. I thought about all the times she had said no, about all the things I had quietly let go of just to keep the peace. The next morning, I found her in the living room, her eyes red and tired. She had clearly been crying. When she saw me, she sighed heavily and gestured for me to sit down. "I don't expect you to understand," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But everything I've done, every rule, no, it's all been for your good." She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the blanket draped across her lap. Sometimes we have to trust things we can't explain." It was the vaguest, most frustrating non-answer she could have given me, and yet I could feel the weight of it. There was something there, something buried deep beneath her words, but she wasn't ready to tell me yet, and honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. The weeks leading up to graduation felt like walking through fog, thick, suffocating, and directionless. My friends were buzzing with excitement about college plans, summer trips, and new beginnings, but I felt like I was standing still. Every conversation with my mom was sharp-edged and tense, always teetering on the edge of an argument. One morning, while she was stirring her coffee in the kitchen, I asked her again, "What are you so afraid of?" She mentioned the fortune teller again, but this time, it wasn't about the tattoo. It was about me. The fortune teller had told her something about my life. My mother never gave me every detail, but from what she did share, a pretty clear picture emerged. She believed that something bad was going to happen to me, namely, that I was going to become a young mother. That's why she was always so protective of me. That's why every decision, every restriction, every overprotective rule had been built like a fortress around me, to prevent something she had been warned about years before I was even born. I was furious. All these years, every missed party, every friend I drifted away from, every experience I never got to have, it was all because of this. A random woman with a deck of cards and some vague warnings had dictated my entire life, and now, thanks to her, everyone in my town knew me as the girl with the strict mother. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" I asked her, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. She explained that she doesn't believe in fortune tellers or psychics or any of that nonsense. Not really. But the things that fortune teller had said about her life, about my father, about how they would meet, about where he'd come from, all of it had come true in strange, specific ways, and because of that, she couldn't let go of the fear that this, too, might come true. She said she wasn't just trying to control me, she was trying to save me, and despite the anger burning in my chest, I understood. That night, something shifted between us. It wasn't perfect, but the wall between us cracked just a little. My mother promised me she wouldn't let the words of a stranger dictate her parenting anymore. And I promised her that I had never, and would never, let her down. After that conversation, something shifted between my mother and me. The air between us wasn't so heavy anymore, and for the first time, I felt like she truly saw me, not just as her child, but as someone capable of making my own decisions. She admitted she had let the fortune teller's words control her for far too long. It wasn't that she believed in magic or fate, but the way those predictions about her life had come true made it impossible for her to ignore the warnings about me. She was scared that something irreversible would happen, scared that she would fail me. But that fear had caused damage. She had built a cage around me, thinking it was a shield. And I had spent years trying to breathe through bars I couldn't even see. We didn't fix everything overnight. Old habits don't just disappear, and neither do deeply rooted fears. But we started to meet each other halfway. She stopped questioning every move I made, and I started sharing more of my plans with her, not out of obligation, but out of trust. When the day came for me to leave for university, she didn't try to stop me. She hugged me tightly at the door, told me she was proud of me, and promised that she would no longer let those old fears dictate our relationship. University was everything I had hoped it would be. Independence, late-night study sessions, new friends, it was like stepping into a world I had only dreamed of. And through it all, I kept in touch with my mom. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Slowly, she started to believe in me more than in the predictions of a stranger, and I proved her right. I stayed focused, worked hard, and thrived. For the first time, the future felt like mine. The years I spent at university felt like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a locked room for so long. I made friends, stayed up too late studying, and made decisions, big and small, on my own. And through it all, my mom was there. Not hovering, not controlling, but supporting. We talked often, and our relationship grew into something more balanced, more open. She stopped seeing me as a fragile glass figure on the verge of shattering and started seeing me for what I was, a capable, independent adult. I graduated with honors. And when I walked across that stage to accept my diploma, my mom was in the crowd. She was beaming, clapping louder than anyone else. After the ceremony, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "You've always made me proud. I just wish I had trusted you sooner." There was no bitterness in her voice, just relief, like a weight she had been carrying for years had finally been set down. The fortune teller's predictions no longer haunted us. My mother let them go, and I stopped feeling like I was living under a prophecy I never asked for. I carved out a future that was mine, and my mom learned to trust not in vague warnings, but in me. Sometimes, when I visit home, I see her watching me with a quiet smile, and I know she's proud. Not just of what I've achieved, but of the person I've become. And honestly, I'm proud of her too. We both broke free from the shadows of someone else's words, and now we're finally free to just live.
What would you do in a similar situation? Share your opinion in the comments.